Okay, so this thing has started a bit early because I'm still practicing all of this. But I wanted to just give you a brief introduction into what exactly it is that we do and what this channel is going to be about. And, for those of you that have been following the Prodigal Ministries Walking with Winners channel, you'll see that most of the content that was on this channel was sermons that we preached and so on and so forth. But, over the years, I've grown quite attached to watching podcasts and the like. So I've decided to try and, do a similar thing and to try and help people understand various issues that come about in terms of addiction and in terms of the methodologies that we incorporate, and also to give people the opportunity to speak to me directly via these lives in order that we can possibly, answer some questions for people. Also, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be bringing in guys that are on the program that are willing to speak to our audience to try and help people get a better understanding of their addiction problems and what they feel has led them to where they are, and what they feel is going to help them going forward. Having said that, I thought I'd start with a brief introduction for those that have no idea who we are, who I am, and let you know exactly what the story is. My name is Dave Barber. I'm an ordained pastor, currently finishing off the final year of a theology degree, with the possibility of moving on to honors and masters and so on and so forth. And I've been in the addiction industry pretty much since birth. Just to give you a brief synopsis. Born into a family where alcoholism was an issue, went through school, had a good childhood. The alcoholism affected me only in terms of verbal abuse, if you want to call it abuse, but it's not really abuse, just, drunk people being drunk people. Went through school, did pretty okay at school, went to the South African police, got posted to Hillbrow, and got involved in all kinds of nightmarish things there. Eventually got involved in drugs and crime myself. Was ultimately forced to leave the police. Lived on and off the streets for years after that. Ended up at a Christian rehabilitation center multiple times during one of those processes. Came out of the rehab and ended up in prison for a period of 6 months. Came out of prison, back to the streets, back to rehab, and then ultimately, during my last stay in that particular recovery center, I worked my way up to the position of assistant director. In the interim, I married my wife, Isabel. Worked there for 3 years, left there, went into private business, relapsed again, and ended up in a different recovery center, recovered there, ultimately came out, and then, I was lost, didn't know where I was going to go. And as fate would have it, people started hearing about me being in the area, and then I'd had a long period of time assisting addicts in a Christian facility, and people started arriving at our house, and that developed into what is now Walking with Winners Men's Drug and Alcohol Rehabilitation Center that's out in Walkable. So, that brings me to, the various methodologies that we employ. Our center is a Christian faith-based center. Having said that, we have treated many people from many different faiths who have found value in the program. Some of them have converted to Christianity, some of them haven't. Some of those that haven't converted have still applied the principles and processes that we taught them here and are still sober and clean today and are leading good lives. And many of those that have converted to Christianity or who have come in here, with traditional Christianity, have taken hold of what we've taught them here and also clean and sober. Many have failed. Many have failed. And unfortunately, the reality is that more fail than succeed. But why do we choose the Christian philosophy? Why do we choose the methodology of faith in God and faith in Christ as a recourse for addiction? Well, in our view, the Bible is the final authority on human behavior, and if you look at various characters in the Bible, ranging from, I spoke about it this morning in our daily devotion to the guys, from the beginning of time, man has been tempted and man has made negative choices. If you take it once again from the garden, it talks about if you eat from the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, that you will surely die. And if you just superimpose addiction, if you eat from the tree of addiction or you eat from the tree of substance abuse, you will surely die. And the manner in which people, accomplish the nightmare or get involved in the nightmare of drugs is they ultimately choose to get involved in something that they know is bad and evil for them, and is taken, and is usually introduced by someone with nefarious intent, and then they ultimately get trapped in this addictive behavior, which ultimately could lead to their death. And so, you go through the Bible and you meet characters like Moses and Samson and David and these types of people who all had major character problems and character issues, ultimately then we get to Jesus Christ, who lived a perfect life. And then we look at the New Testament with Paul and John and Peter and these types of people that give us instruction on how we expected to live our lives and what is expected of us. And we try and instill these methods of living good lives and loving our neighbors and loving our God and loving our parents and loving our communities and being upstanding men and upstanding citizens. And we do that in a formalized way with certain formalized recovery systems, such as the Celebrate Recovery 12-step program, which is a Christ-centered 12-step program based on the original Alcoholics Anonymous program, which was always designed to work towards spiritual renewal. We then run a program called Truth About Drugs, which brings the physiological and the mental aspect to the dangers of drug abuse into the forefront of treatment. Then we run another program called Heart of Addiction, which once again teaches us about the spiritual connotations to drugs and the spiritual outworkings of our use of drugs and how to incorporate spiritual living into our lives in order to overcome drugs. Then we run a program called Anger Management with guys that battle with this type of issue. We run a program on gender-based violence. And then we also run occupational therapy programs in terms of we encourage people to do light tasks around the center, such as gardening and maintenance and other activities that we're involved in. We do sport Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we have church and visits on Sundays. So that's pretty much our methodology in our program. The main reason I believe in the Christ-centered faith-based situation is because that is how I recovered. That is how I found life, and that is how I finally managed to get through the problems and the mental issues that I, packed on during my life as an addict, and I packed on during my life as a policeman, and I packed on as a life as a criminal. It is only the freedom that I found in Jesus Christ that has managed to allow me to forgive myself, to forgive people around me, and most importantly, to find forgiveness from primarily God, and to then seek forgiveness from people that I've harmed. In terms of our credentials, you know, like I said, I've been involved in and around ADDICTS since birth. You know, I grew up in an addictive household. As a policeman, I was around addicts all day, every day, working with drugs, working with addiction daily. I came out of that situation and I was around addicts for my entire criminal life. And ultimately, you know, I spent nearly 7 years at a Christian facility, you know, working with addicts, being a recovering addict, being around addicts, and ultimately understanding what it takes to recover. And then ultimately, on top of that, finding that a lot of the people that I was in recovery with and a lot of people that I worked with over those years, you know, ultimately recovered and ultimately, you know, let me know that, you know, I played a major part in their recoveries. And so when I finally came out of my last recovery center and people started arriving at my door, you know, I started implementing very similar processes, you know, in these people's lives that I found it helped me. And having the experience of being in various recovery centers, I sort of try to find the best and most productive programs that would assist people greatly. Now, I've been doing this formally at Walking with Winners as the director, with my wife, the co-director, who runs the administrative and day-to-day running of the center, with me being the spiritual head and the head of the programs here. You know, I've been doing this now for 15 years. On the trot. And in those 15 years, you know, we've had approximately 4,000 people through the doors of the center. And, you know, of which hundreds and possibly over 1,000 people have found recovery here. So, you know, we just continue fighting the good fight, as Paul says. And, you know, with my experiential knowledge, I've decided now to finally formalize my experiential knowledge with academic knowledge and complete this degree in theology, which I'm hoping to complete at the end of this year, in order to better help people, you know, in order for me to better understand the biblical concepts, the theology behind the Bible, why people did the things they did, and to try and then superimpose those systems better on the people that come through our doors. You've got to understand that the people that come through our doors at Walking with Winners are, and I'm generalizing now, but are completely broken and destroyed. You know, we're not dealing with addicts that still have multi-millions in the bank and, you know, are able to still sustain themselves economically, financially. You know, when people get to me, it's generally people that are coming off the streets, have completely destroyed all family ties. Many of them come from jail. Many of them, we have to go through court order processes to get them to a place of at least a period of sobriety where we can start pushing the message of recovery on them. So, you know, we're dealing with a massive issue. You know, while I'm just touching on that, I don't want to take too much time because I don't want to bore people. But, you know, in South Africa today, we're dealing with a massive drug problem. And, you know, when you look at the general attitude of our communities and society, you know, there's such a vast gap, chasm between the people that are living in communities that are completely ravaged with drugs versus people that are living in communities where, you know, sorry to say it like this, but, you know, money and power, and that tends to cover up the, you know, the facade. Well, it's a facade that covers up the reality of the issues in their life. And it's amazing to me how people that are, you know, desperately in need of help, you know, seem to find themselves, you know, seeking luxury over help. And, you know, when you look at it, when I started out as an addict and as a cop, the reality is that drugs was a small problem in South Africa because South Africa was so isolated, and because it was a police state. You know, the police and society had quite a tight grip on the addiction problem. We always had addictions, in our society with alcohol, but when it comes to other drugs of abuse such as marijuana or dacha, as we call it in South Africa, and these types of things, we never had access in a big way to drugs like heroin or cocaine or crystal methamphetamine or these types of things. These are new things that only started appearing, at the beginning of the 90s, and then as we went into 1994 and we came into freedom and this tight grip of the police was left the country, and as our borders opened to more and more ideas, and as our borders opened to more international inputs and that, so the drugs started coming in. And at that time South Africa was still an exceptionally wealthy country, even though a vast majority of the country didn't have access to that wealth. Those that had access to the wealth, had access to these drugs and that. And as things changed in the country and the access to wealth stopped being a minority white type of consumer, and more people that were previously disadvantaged, had access to more finance and access to more things. So the drugs started infiltrating into the other areas. When you look at the drug problem in South Africa, when I started out, it was generally more a minority problem: whites, coloreds, Indians, and other. Where drugs was really a problem. We always had an issue with alcohol in the black communities and with dacha, but not at the level that we're seeing now. Now we're sitting in a situation where these serious drugs of abuse like crystal meth, heroin, crack cocaine, they've got different names in our country, and I'm not going to use those names, because I don't want people to get confused. But those types of drugs started going into the black communities, and that, to the point where now our biggest problem, is across the board actually, but the black community is really struggling with an absolute nightmare of drugs in their communities, as young people especially, who are struggling to find work, struggling to find education, struggling to find their feet, are leaning more and more towards, the drugs to allow them to alleviate their pain and allow them to alleviate their poverty and all these types of things. So we're sitting in a massive problem and a massive crisis. Also, we have a complete breakdown, as we all know, of our law and order in this country, and criminal entities and cartels and gangs, are allowed to operate freely in terms of the drug problem. We've got millions of foreign nationals, primarily in terms of the drug abuse situation, from Nigeria. Anyone who tries to disclaim that claim is a fool and is living in some kind of alternate reality. And we're allowing these people to fly into our country and sell these poisons to our kids and our communities and our citizens, unabated, absolutely unabated. And in the last particularly the last 5 years, but starting 10 years ago, we've seen the explosion of rehabilitation centers in South Africa. And unfortunately, the reality is that the majority of these facilities don't have the wherewithal, the knowledge, the experience that is required to be treating people, and are running outside of the laws established by, the Act of 2008. And so we have addicts running free, people helping addicts that don't know what they're doing, and we have these criminal entities just pumping the drugs into our country. So we're sitting in a very, very serious problem. And it's my hope and my wish to start this channel so that we can discuss these things and we can find solutions to our problems in South Africa, and possibly people that watch from other parts of the world, can also find benefit in what we're trying to do here. I hope that we can bless you with this channel. I hope we can bless you with these podcasts. And, if you need to get hold of me, you can get hold of me at dave@nodrugs.co.za, dave@nodrugs.co.za. To definitely help us if we can grow this channel, and you could subscribe to our channel and like the posts. And what would even help us even more is if you, participate in the comments and so on and so forth. Lekker. Have a great day. Lekker is the South African word for everything is good. So I hope you have a great day, and I hope that you find benefit in what we do and what we're hoping to achieve here. God bless you all. Cheers.